Welcome back to Demolition Worker. Today we tackle the towering drilling derrick, a massive symbol of offshore engineering facing its final days. Standing hundreds of feet above the dark ocean, this giant steel structure must be dismantled piece by piece with absolute extreme precision. The sheer scale of this offshore operation is completely breathtaking, requiring the largest massive sea cranes to perform incredibly delicate heavy lifts. We will witness the ultimate engineering challenge as our brave crews dismantle this colossal metal beast under the harsh and unforgiving sky. Every single rusted beam and massive joint tells a long story of relentless deep-sea drilling against the powerful forces of nature. Look closely at the horizon as the massive heavy lift vessel slowly approaches the rig, carrying a colossal crane on its deck. Positioning this gigantic floating crane requires master navigation, battling unpredictable ocean currents and strong winds that constantly threaten the entire demolition mission. The crane operator sits high above the water, preparing to execute complex maneuvers that demand absolute perfection and nerves of solid steel. Before any lifting can begin, our specialized crews must climb the towering derrick to secure the rigging and inspect the structural integrity. Looking down from the very top of the derrick, the raging ocean waves below seem like a terrifying dark abyss of water. The dizzying height creates a profound sense of severe vertigo, reminding everyone that a single mistake up here could be absolutely fatal. Workers secure their safety harnesses tightly as they navigate the slippery steel walkways, surrounded by nothing but roaring winds and vast ocean. The first major obstacle involves the massive structural bolts holding the derrick together, which have been heavily corroded by decades of salt. These are not ordinary bolts. Each rusted piece of metal is literally the size of an adult human thigh and incredibly heavy. Standard tools are completely useless here. The crew brings out heavy hydraulic torque wrenches designed specifically for this extreme type of work. The hydraulic wrench clamps down onto the giant rusted nut, applying immense rotational pressure to break the stubborn seal of ocean corrosion. With a deafening mechanical crack, the massive bolt finally turns, releasing decades of incredible tension held within the heavy steel rig structure. Removing these giant fasteners is physically exhausting work, requiring multiple technicians to operate the heavy hydraulic equipment in extremely tight, dangerous spaces. Spark showers rain down as cutting torches are used to sever the welded joints that stubbornly refuse to yield to the wrenches. The intense heat of the torch slices through thick steel plating like soft butter, illuminating the dark sky with brilliant, bright flashes. Now the massive sea crane slowly lowers its giant hook toward the very peak of the derrick, ready for the first lift. Riggers carefully attach thick steel cables to the designated lifting points, ensuring the 100-ton load will remain perfectly balanced in midair. Tension builds on the massive cables as the giant crane begins to pull, taking the full weight of the heavy upper section. The entire platform groans loudly under the immense stress as the heavy steel section is finally torn away from its original base. Suspended high in the air, the massive steel block sways slightly in the ocean breeze, a terrifying sight for the deck crew. The crane operator must compensate for the rolling motion of the sea, keeping the suspended load stable over the active work zone. Slowly and methodically, the giant crane swings the massive derrick section away from the platform and out over the open blue ocean. Down below, a massive transport barge waits patiently to receive the heavy steel cargo, bobbing gently in the deep blue ocean waves. Lowering a 100-ton steel block onto a moving ship is an incredibly delicate dance between the crane operator and barge crew. The massive steel structure touches down onto the wooden deck of the transport ship with a powerful thud that shakes the vessel. Workers rush in to secure the massive section to the deck, using heavy chains and tensioners to prevent shifting during ocean transit. With the top section successfully removed, the crew immediately prepares to tackle the middle tier of the massive offshore drilling derrick structure. The weather begins to shift, bringing dark clouds and stronger winds that make the high-altitude demolition work significantly more dangerous now. Despite the deteriorating conditions, the demolition crew pushes forward, knowing they have a very tight schedule to clear the offshore drilling platform. Once again, the heavy hydraulic wrenches are deployed to loosen another set of massive rusted bolts holding the middle steel section together. The relentless salt spray has practically fused these metal joints together, forcing the crew to use maximum hydraulic pressure to break them. A sudden gust of wind violently shakes the towering structure, testing the nerves of the brave workers suspended high above the water. The crane hook returns, descending from the dark sky like a giant mechanical claw ready to claim its next massive steel prize. Rigging this middle section is much more complex, requiring an intricate web of thick steel cables to properly distribute the immense weight. The signal is given and the massive cables pull completely taut, groaning under the incredible strain of lifting another 100-ton block. Sparks fly as the final safety cuts are made, completely detaching the heavy middle section from the remaining base of the derrick. The massive steel chunk lifts off the deck, casting a huge dark shadow over the workers who watch nervously from safe distances. This section contains heavy drilling machinery, making the load uneven and requiring the crane operator to make constant tiny micro adjustments now. The giant sea crane pivots smoothly, demonstrating incredible mechanical precision despite carrying a massive load that weighs as much as a building. From a drone perspective, the scale of this operation is truly mind-boggling, with tiny human figures orchestrating massive heavy steel movements. The transport barge slowly maneuvers into position, again, its crew ready to receive the second massive piece of the dismantled drilling derrick. The lowering process demands absolute silence on the radio channels, allowing only the spotter to communicate directly with the focused crane operator. Inch by inch, the heavy steel beast descends toward the deck, the massive shadow growing larger over the waiting crew down below. Perfect landing is achieved, and the crew quickly moves in to secure the massive load before the ocean waves cause trouble. We are now left with only the massive lower base of the derrick, the thickest and most heavily reinforced section of all. This final section is deeply anchored into the main deck, requiring extensive structural cutting before any heavy lifting can actually take place. Teams of specialized welders and cutters swarm the base, using advanced thermal lances to slice through steel plates over 3 inches thick. The molten steel drips down like glowing lava, creating a spectacular visual display against the cold industrial backdrop of the drilling platform. Every cut must be calculated with absolute precision to ensure the massive structure does not collapse prematurely and endanger the working crew. The structural engineers monitor the stress points constantly, using advanced sensors to detect any unwanted shifting in the massive steel base structure. As the final structural supports are sliced through, the massive sea crane takes on the full weight of the heavy derrick base. The sheer power of the floating crane is completely awe-inspiring as it effortlessly holds hundreds of tons of solid heavy steel. With a final deafening crack of breaking metal, the massive base is ripped completely free from the deck of the drilling platform. The once towering symbol of this offshore rig has now been completely reduced to massive floating chunks of heavy scrap metal today. The crane swings the enormous base section toward the transport barge, completing the final major lift of this incredibly dangerous demolition operation. The barge is now fully loaded with massive steel sections, a floating graveyard of heavy offshore machinery heading straight for the scrapyard. Watching the fully loaded transport ship slowly sail away into the horizon provides a profound sense of closure for the demolition crew. The platform deck looks strangely empty now, completely stripped of the towering derrick that defined its iconic silhouette for so many decades. Crew begins the tedious process of cleaning up the massive deck, removing leftover debris and securing the area for upcoming storms. Every discarded bolt and twisted piece of sharp metal must be carefully collected to ensure the absolute safety of the remaining workers. The extreme physical toll of this dangerous offshore demolition work is clearly visible on the exhausted faces of our incredibly brave crew. They have successfully dismantled one of the most challenging offshore structures in the world without a single safety incident or major injury. The engineering brilliance required to safely reverse the construction of such a massive offshore structure is a true testament to human ingenuity. As the sun begins to set over the vast ocean, the modified profile of the offshore rig casts a very different shadow. The golden hour light beautifully illuminates the raw steel edges where the massive drilling derrick once stood proudly against the sky above. This successful operation proves that even the most colossal man-made structures can be safely taken apart with proper planning and skill. The heavy lift vessel begins to retract its massive crane, preparing to navigate away from the platform and return to the port. The sheer mechanical complexity of these giant floating cranes makes them the absolute undisputed kings of heavy ocean engineering and demolition work. We reflect on the incredible history of this offshore platform, which has drilled deep into the earth for over 30 long years. The removal of the derrick marks the official end of its drilling lifespan, transitioning the platform into its final decommissioning phase today. Future episodes will cover the removal of the living quarters and the underwater support legs anchoring this rig to the deep seabed. The challenges will only increase as we move closer to the waterline, where the destructive power of the ocean waves is strongest. Deep sea divers will soon replace our high-altitude riggers, taking the demolition battle into the dark and freezing depths below us. But for today, we can celebrate a massive engineering victory, having safely conquered the highest and most dangerous peak of the platform. The coordination between the crane operators, riggers, and transport crews was absolutely flawless, demonstrating the highest level of professional offshore demolition teamwork. These brave men and women risk their lives daily in extreme conditions to safely dismantle the giant industrial relics of our past. As darkness falls over the ocean, the platform lights up, revealing the newly flattened deck against the pitch-black night sky above. The roaring sound of the ocean waves crashing against the steel pillars serves as a constant reminder of nature's incredible raw power. We leave the offshore rig behind for now, but the massive demolition journey is far from over for our dedicated expert crew. The heavy transport ship continues its long voyage back to shore, carrying thousands of tons of recyclable steel to be melted down. This massive steel will eventually be repurposed, finding new life in modern construction projects and continuing the endless cycle of industrial progress. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey to the very top of the offshore drilling world and back down again. We hope you gained a deep appreciation for the extreme scale and incredible danger involved in heavy offshore demolition and salvage operations. Be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode of our thrilling, heavy industrial demolition series. This is Demolition Worker signing off. Stay safe out there, and we will see you next time for another massive teardown project.